James. Welcome to the Light Path podcast.
Hi, Kirsten. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
I am so freaking intrigued by your work and what it is that you do. And so I cannot wait to dive into what it is you do offer people, but more importantly, how important it is. But before we get into any of that, I'd love to hear your story. Who are you? How did you find yourself in this amazing but intricate world of holistic wellness?
Yeah, awesome. Thanks so much for having me. So where do I start? A quick introduction. I'm the founder of a couple of health and wellness companies. One is called Anda. We're helping people with stress and anxiety with a wearable that we're building to help people with their breath work when they become stressed in the moment. And the other business I'm running is called Premium Grounding. And we create grounding products that help people get the benefits of grounding when they can't get their feet on the grass. And I'm sure we'll get a bit more into that as we go around grounding. But essentially, everything I do is around health and wellness. I wrote a book called The Wellbeing Revolution when I was 21, whilst I was still at uni. Not sure I'd really recommend it.
Okay, I like
15 years down the line. But yeah, I've always been interested in the space, always looking to optimize and figure out what I can do to be at my best and how I can help others to do the same.
What were you studying at university to kind of spark that?
I was actually studying business. So not exactly aligned, although it's helping me now with business.
100%, yeah. And so when you were at uni studying business, what area of life did you go into post-uni?
So after uni, I actually landed in software. So I was writing my book at the time. I've probably got my mum to thank for helping me sort of be really passionate about health and wellness. But at the same time, I was writing my book and making a little bit of money from health coaching, not really enough to live on my own. And so she put a bit of pressure on me to go out and get a real job and fend for myself a little bit. So I landed in software. And I worked in software for about 10 years before founding these two companies, but some good skills to learn along the way.
Oh, for sure. And I think that's the thing about life. We talked about this a lot on the podcast last year about that whole powerful force that is the pivot, that you can change and you should change ultimately, and every step along the way is so important because it just informs the next.
Definitely. Yeah, I'm a big believer in everything. Maybe to say everything happens for a reason, it feels like sort of a real broad term, but I feel like everything that happens pushes us to the next thing. And it's really where you want to be, because you're constantly getting pushed into something where you're using the skills you've learned along the way to get through it.
And so what's your personal wellness journey been or looked like?
It's probably been up and down, to be honest. I've always been into fitness. So like I exercise or have exercised every day, basically since I was 16. I played pretty high level football when I was younger. So I've always been interested in fitness. But potentially at times I've pushed it too hard, not knowing that sometimes exercising too much actually has negative effects rather than positive. In general, I've always focused on eating a really healthy diet and getting sleep and exercise and things like that. But I have suffered from a bit of IBS along the way, which I'm still actually trying to work through at the moment. But the IBS has sort of affected my sleep at times, which led me into grounding. But yeah, constantly just trying to figure out how I can be at my best and what diet that is and what exercise that is and what schedules and things like that.
And there's so much, I don't know, like a bombardment of information and rights and wrongs out there. Really, I think that maybe through this thing that you've discovered in the business that you run, it actually isn't that complicated.
Yeah, you're spot on. I think we get so influenced by what we see. And back in the day, it was businesses marketing to us. But now I feel like if I open up Instagram or TikTok, it's like, you should be doing ice baths, you should be doing saunas, you should be doing this exercise, you should be eating this. And it's sort of like it clouds your head a little bit. But at the end of the day, it's not that complicated, I think. It's just figuring out what works best for you, doing the basics right, like getting enough sleep, drinking enough water, moving around. But it can be quite difficult to figure out what those things are when you're constantly bombarded by, you should be doing this.
Yeah, for sure. And like, I mean, you're obviously a guy, you don't even have that extra complication of a cycle of hormones every 29.5 days. So to kind of be in tune with your body, you have to make the space to be really observant of it. What does it need right now? What is it asking of you right now? And even though people are out there trying to help us all the time by providing us with all this information, sometimes it can actually disconnect from our own intuition and our own ability to hear ourselves.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
You mentioned before breath work. I want to quickly touch on this before I go into grounding, because that's what I really want to talk to you about is grounding. But have you got a background in breath work?
Yeah, so I founded so it's called Anda Health. My co-founder, her name is Elizabeth, and the two of us became breathwork coaches when we decided to start this business. So I wouldn't say I'm like a full-on expert in the space. There's definitely people who know more than me, but I've got a pretty good understanding of the fundamentals of breathwork, which really are, I mean, just like you were saying about overcomplicating things. The keys to breathwork are quite simple. It's about breathing slowly, breathing into your belly through your diaphragm, and breathing through your nose. They're really the key things. Focusing on not breathing too frequently or too shallowly. That'll probably get you like 95% of the way there.
Yeah, again, I love that. It's not even that complicated. But we can go down these rabbit holes, and people with maybe the best of intentions make it way more daunting and complicated than it actually is. So let's do that now with grounding. I'm really setting ourselves up to fail here. But so yes, you own this grounding company well, actually tell us about the company first, but then more importantly, I want to get into what the hell is grounding, because I think it's one of these spiritual things that you hear about, but no one actually really understands and knows what it is and why it's so important.
Yeah, for sure. So maybe I'll start with the background of how I got into grounding.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm always keen to try new things around the health and wellness space, but I'm usually quite skeptical to start with. Open to try and then skeptical and then just see what happens. But my brother-in-law got a grounding mat, and at the time I didn't know what it was or what it did. So essentially the way he recommended it to me was that we've now moved so far away from nature, and he was talking about how people used to walk on the ground all the time with bare feet. They used to sleep on the ground, and the ground has a lot of healing benefits. And essentially, the body creates free radicals. And when there's too many free radicals being built up, then the body creates inflammation. Inflammation can be a really good thing to help fight diseases, but when we get too much of it, that's when we get chronic diseases like autoimmunes and arthritis and things like that. So essentially, the earth has a negative charge, and when we connect directly to the earth, it neutralizes those free radicals to reduce the inflammation. And there are companies like ours that create grounding products to help people to ground when they can't have their feet like directly on the earth. And so he told me about how he bought a grounding sheet which goes on his bed, and when he sleeps, he's grounding. And I was like, this sounds like an absolute crock of rubbish. Like, I just don't see how that could help at all. It sounds like a bit woo-woo. And he's like, just give it a try. And I swear, if you don't sleep better in like a month, I'll buy it back off you. And like, it's like a no risk thing for you. So I bought one and was incredibly skeptical. And the first night or first 2 nights, I didn't really feel anything. But a week later, my wife and I, we just could not believe how deep we were sleeping and how many dreams we were having. And I was like, this is just unreal. So I like told all my friends about it and got a few of my friends on board, and they tried it. And I was like, all right, this is a real thing. And I found that there actually aren't that many quality manufacturers, particularly in Australia. In America, there are a couple of bigger companies, but in Australia, the products on the market aren't very good. They're, the way that you have to use them and the connectivity to the ground just isn't quite strong enough. So I decided to manufacture some and start a business, just because I feel like it's such a big space, like an untapped space. So I'm now selling products to help people ground with bed sheets and grounding mats for when they're at home.
So let's go back to free radicals. Like, we're going to do grounding for dummies here. What are free radicals?
Well, I don't know how deep to go into the science, but essentially free radicals is like, it's inflammation that's created in the body as a response to something that's happening externally. And so the biggest causes of free radicals right now are things in our environment. So It could be pollution. It could be electromagnetic fields that our bodies are taking in from like cell phones or laptops or Wi-Fi. It could be in the foods that we're eating, the water we're drinking. Essentially, our body is creating these free radicals to fight off anything negative that it doesn't want in the body, which is a really good thing. So like if we get ill, the body creates free radicals and inflammation to fight that off. So in general, it's a good thing. But when it's built up over time and it's like constantly things that the body's trying to defend, then it becomes too much, and the body creates an inflammation as like a response to say, all right, this is way too much. And that's when the big diseases start to be like sort of built into the body.
Yeah. And I think that like we call them big diseases, but it's scary how common they are. Like I don't know too many people without something going on, especially in the autoimmune family.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then when we look at the earth itself, what is, when it says it's like a negative charge, what is that science? What does that actually mean when it comes to then these protective mechanisms that our body has? Because it's, I mean, we live in this electromagnetic skin, like we are machines in that sense, electrical machines. So what do you mean by the earth has a negative charge?
Maybe the best way to explain it is to talk about electricity. So, and this also sort of fields into how the products are made. So every Australian electrical port has 3 prongs that go into the wall. The top 2 prongs are connecting to electricity, and the bottom prong is connecting to the earth cable. And the reason that there is an earth cable is if there's any issues with like the way the electricity is flowing through and there's a backfire or something like that, then the earth cable sort of disconnects the problem. So essentially, it's now illegal for manufacturers to make plugs that don't have the earth cable, because without the earth cable, there's a chance that like the house could catch on fire or something like that. And when the earth is initiated, it stops that from happening. And so I guess you could think about it like in a simple way. It's the same with the body. So if something goes aflame, essentially, like it's probably not, I'm not using the right terminology, but when something lights up in the body, connecting to the earth then sort of dulls it back down again.
That honestly is the best explanation I ever heard of grounding, because prior to this and like being introduced to what it is that you do and manufacture, I always look at I have always looked at grounding as a deeply spiritual practice. So for me and my experience of grounding, if you like, my first experience of that was through meditative experience. So really digging into the subconscious and working with the chakra system and really grounding into the earth. And when you're in that trance meditative state, feeling literally the magnetism, the wisdom, the layers, the history of the ground in which we walk on. And I think that in that experience, that would have been my first, I guess, physical response to grounding. And although I love nature, I'm not really a nature girl. Like I'm not swinging from trees and I'm not walking barefoot in the grass ever, to be honest. You find me swinging in the sea, and that's about as physically with my body as connected I get to the earth. Yet I'm riddled with a very chronic autoimmune disease, and it is very hard to combat it with lifestyle choices because of the way in which we live, and even just the mental stresses that we go through in the day-to-day. And so even the thought of, we'll just go for a walk in nature in your sneakers, so that doesn't really count, I guess, as grounding because you're in between. But you know, that has never done it for me like what you've just described.
Yeah. And so I think what you just said there about what you used to think about grounding is what I feel like a lot of people would have thought about yoga or meditation like 20, 30 years ago. It's like this spiritual sort of practice, and it's a little bit like a lot of like hippie sort of vibe about it. But nowadays, when you talk about meditation, like it's so common.
Yeah.
Almost everyone does it. It's very mainstream. I feel like there's a shift happening with grounding. So it's sort of, maybe it's where meditation was like 10 years ago,
Mm.
and it's becoming a lot more mainstream now. And like, I'm 100% with you. Like, I often go walking with my wife, and I'll like get out the front door and I won't have my shoes on, and she'll be like, "Oh, come on, put your shoes on. It's embarrassing." And like I'm working inside every day, even though I wish I was outside all the time. And we're missing out on the healing power of the earth that all of our ancestors were getting just from living naturally. Um, so it's
It's
sort of,
like the food we ingest. It is not like, as much as I eat vegetables, oh my gosh, like I often wonder, is a zucchini even supposed to look like this?
yeah, and what's been on it? Yeah,
It's
yeah,
so bad. Yeah, in a lot of ways, we are under so much attack. Okay, I'm going to be skeptical. It blows my mind that something so simple as standing on a grounding mat or sleeping on a grounding mat, I guess, is that what we call it, or a mattress, whatever.
yeah.
Can it be that simple?
That's the exact skepticism I had when my brother-in-law told me about it. I was like, nah, it's a crock of rubbish. Like, no way. And then the only way really that you can change your mindset is or to change the way you think about it, is to experience it for yourself. Which is why we offer a 90-day money back guarantee, just because we know that, yeah, like, I don't think there's been one customer we've had who's been like, nah, this isn't working. We get stories from everyone, like so many different stories. We've got one customer who I think he's 17 now, and he's had cancer for the last 6 years, and he's had all these surgeries on his leg, and he started using it. And within 2 nights, he didn't need his pain medication for sleep anymore.
Mm.
Just like that, just like a simple story. I had a story from someone last night who has like chronic sinusitis and her nose is always dripping. She said after a week, it just completely stopped. And all these people are always shocked when they like give me the feedback. And it feels like every week there's a new story, which is like, what? How's that even possible?
Well, maybe
But
it is that simple. So what is in the actual mat? Is it just like this? Does it mimic the frequency or the charge of the earth?
well, essentially the sleeping sheet, it's like a bedding underlay. So it goes underneath your fitted sheet. So you put it there and then you don't even know it's there. You put your fitted sheet on top. You don't really have to wash it very much. We recommend like every 2 to 3 weeks. So it's basically like you set it up and you forget about it. And the actual sheet itself, it feels like a denim. But obviously you don't feel it when you're fitted sheets on top of it. But it's made up of 30% stainless steel fiber. So it's 30% stainless steel fiber, 70% organic cotton. And then it connects into the wall. And I mentioned the 3 prongs before on the Australian outlets. So the top 2 prongs on our products are plastic, so it can't conduct any electricity. And then the bottom prong is metal, so it connects directly to the earth cable. So essentially, the benefits of earth flow through that cable up into the sheet, and then you're laying on it all night.
Got it. So for people that are listening to this in Europe and in the US, they are not 3-pronged people.
Well, a lot are now. They didn't used to be, but most ports should be now legally. So like there might be some that are like years old, that like products from years ago, like old kettles and toasters and stuff, that might not be. But everything now into first world countries should be connected with an earthing cable.
I'm trying to think last time I was in the US where where stuff doesn't work and stuff like that, and the different outlets and things like that.
Yeah, or you might have used a connector, like, the adapter.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of, actually.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I'm thinking of.
A lot of those actually don't connect to the earth, so you got to be careful with those.
Oh,
Yeah.
hotel on fire just because I want to stroke my hair. Not a big deal at all. So for people that are listening to this who aren't necessarily, affected by the overworking or the overproduction of free radicals in their body, they're not having those physical symptoms, because as you're talking, the person that keeps coming into my mind is my nephew, teenager. Not a fun time to be alive when you're a teenager. And especially now these days with what he's exposed to, even without our knowledge, how is this for everybody? Like, do we need to need it to need it?
I think definitely we produce more free radicals, or we get a bigger accumulation of free radicals the older we get.
Mm-hmm.
So we definitely find that the older people are, the more they notice the differences. But I think also in correlation is the older people are, the more they probably stay inside and they're wearing shoes all the time and things like that. So they're just never connecting to the earth. But I mean, a story we've got is we've got a 3-year-old daughter, and she was like constantly waking up in the night. I guess a lot of toddlers do. So we decided to put one on her bed. And it sounds too good to be true when I tell it, but like within a week, she was sleeping through the night. And so like she's at school every day, and like whenever the crazy thing with kids is as soon as we get home from school, she's like shoes off, she'll go out in the backyard, she's standing on the grass, she like rips her dress off, and she's always naked. I guess it's like a innate human thing that gets drummed out of us as we get older. But like most of the time she's inside, like she's at school for 3 days a week, childcare 3 days a week, or she's inside. So we definitely find benefits for her, even though she's young and she's probably got her feet on the grass a lot more than others. But I positively feel that it's beneficial for everyone. But definitely if you've got some chronic inflammation, or if you're not sleeping well, or chronic stress and things like that, I think you're going to find benefits even more so.
So we could use something like that, but naturally, literally putting your feet in the ground. Like, I know people are going to be thinking like, well, but how long, how often, how much? Like, what does the research say? What does the science say?
It's such a common question. How long should I do it for? And definitely like the products we sell is like turbocharging and making sure you're earthing the majority of the time. But if you can't afford it, or it's not for you, then like get outside and just get your feet on the grass or the sand or the dirt or whatever, whenever you can. Even just standing on bricks or concrete, you'll be earthing, because that connects to the earth as well.
Oh, really?
So in terms of time, like there's so many articles that are like, get outside for 10 minutes in the morning or stand on the grass for 30 minutes. I think it's a bit crazy. My wife and I work inside all day, every day. And the other day we went for a 20-minute walk around the block, and we were just musing about how, isn't it so dumb that we're sitting down all day and then we're walking for like 20 minutes? It just doesn't make sense. It should be the other way around. And so like, yeah, sure, putting your feet on the grass for 20 minutes is great, but really like it's so much less than what we probably should be doing if you did have more time to do it or were able to do it more. So I mean, really just the answer is the more you can do it, the better.
Look, and I think anything like this that allows us to connect literally to the magnetic and alive power of the earth is so beneficial. So we've got a treat for you. If this is something that you are interested in and that you're wanting to try, we can help you out with that. So what's the deal?
Yeah, well, for the listeners of the podcast, we can offer a 20% discount. I'm trying to remember the code that maybe we'll put the code in the show notes.
I'll definitely put the code in the show notes, but I know it just because I know my business name. I think it's TLPC, the light path.
That's right.
TLPC. I think we had it all caps, but I'm not sure that matters.
It shouldn't matter.
But we'll put it in the show notes. So if this is interesting to you, that is so generous of you to offer that discount to us. It's something that I'm definitely doing, and because I am wanting really to, for me, it's definitely like the health and the inflammation, but for me, it's more about, I really want to feel so much more in tune with this planet, because I know how much she has to offer us and how little we know about the power of that.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you there. I think we're just moving so far away from nature, and this is sort of like something that we've come up to help bridge that gap a little bit. It would be better if you can be outside all day, every day, but obviously it's not possible all the time. So I guess this is the best alternative.
Exactly. So here are your options. You either sleep outside or you sleep on this. And I know my choice. It's pretty solid. Thank you so much for like sharing your wellness story. But I think also to just really appreciate that there are such rational science-based approaches to what, is considered sometimes woo-woo or spirituality. I just really appreciate just the tone at which that you're able to express that to help people really be back into a state of wellness that is as authentic and organic as possible.
Thanks, Kirsten. And actually, whilst you were saying that, I just remembered I haven't really touched on any of the research, but there are quite a lot of studies coming out now around the benefits of earthing and grounding. So you can find those on our website, premiumgrounding.au. But like I mentioned before, I feel like if we looked up research on meditation 20 years ago, there probably wouldn't have been much at all. But there's like a real flurry of research being done right now over the next couple of years on grounding. So there's going to be more and more coming out.
I've no doubt that what we'll find in there is that, as we know, inflammation is the start of the biggest diseases and killers. And this is an opportunity for us to actually reverse the impact of that, or to at least slow it down. And I think that that is invaluable.
Definitely. Yeah, I'm 100% with you on that one.
All right, we'll check out the show notes for the link, but also to the discount code. James, thank you so much for your entrepreneurship and helping make our lives just that little bit more well.
Thanks so much for having me, Kirsten. It was great.